I love it. It was great. He said, Carl, one of the great moments in the call was that he said, we're all going to have robots that do all the things that we don't want to do. Now, that's not that far what Jensen Huang says from NVIDIA. By the way, NVIDIA, with a big shout out, they have 50,000 NVIDIA chips in this one plant. Oh, he actually has to take a shot at NVIDIA, too, because he says he needs more. He can't get more because it's such demand, so we have to make our own. And
right,
of course,
Dojo is their own.
Dojo.
It basically says we're not, they're in such demand. I think we have that sound.
You want to play that?
Sure, we'll play.
Okay, go ahead.
What we are seeing is that the demand for NVIDIA hardware is so high that it's often difficult to get the GPUs. There just seems this, I guess I'm quite concerned about actually being able to get state-of-the-art NVIDIA GPUs when we want them. I think this therefore requires that we put a lot more effort on Dojo in order to ensure that we've got the training capability that we need. So we are going to double down on Dojo, and we do see a path to being competitive with NVIDIA.
And there it is. I mean, over time, he's basically saying those chips are going to be in such demand that we need to have our own.
You know, he built the Blackwell 200. That's the new iteration. He's got his game plan for it. I mean, Carl, this is one of those calls that that the stock market doesn't like because it's too far out. But there are investors like Cathie Wood that embrace this very far out view, of which he was glad to share with. But in general, I mean, I listen to it and I just say to myself, I think it should be enough, but it's not at 176. It's now up much more. And there are people, I mean, I know people who sell it today. He would just be then completely as contemptuous toward them as he was toward Mary Barra and GM last time.
Let's get more on this market sell-off right now with the NASDAQ headed towards its worst day since late 2022. Even the small caps are lower today. Jeff Kilberg is here. He's KKM Financial's founder and CEO and a CNBC contributor. Jeff, just looking for some off-the-cuff thoughts. What do you think?
Well, Kelly, it's interesting. Risk happens fast, and we are seeing the VIX pop up to 17.5. That's a 20% move higher as we're seeing the tech leadership, the very narrow tech leadership, see some profit taking. But I'm not going to ring the alarm. If you look at SMH, Kelly, which is the semiconductor Van Eck ETF, that's still up 40% year to date. But with a 20% weighting to NVIDIA, you are seeing profit taking. But I think it's some of the recent multi-month lows, either in NVIDIA or in Meta, you are seeing them being violated. So there's some technical damage going on today with the NASDAQ down 3%. Looks on the QQQ chart, Kelly, it can go all the way down to 426. That's the 200-day moving average that we could see a test. That's another 8.5% lower. I don't know if we're going to go there anytime soon, but technically that's what's being pointed at.
We're around 466 right now. I like what you're saying, Jeff, because basically, I'm going to ask you the whys. Well, why is this happening? Why is NVIDIA down 5%? Was it something that Alphabet said on the call last night about investing and the ROI on AI? And you're going to look at the charts and tell me in some way it doesn't matter, or we'll figure it out later. But right now, the price action is the most important thing.
Well, we've been raising eyebrows for quite some time. You know that. And I've been buying puts, spending good hard-earned money on buying puts to protect profits. And finally, we're seeing those puts pay off. But what's interesting is I think it's just been a culmination of uncertainty going back to the economy, the strength of the consumer, this earnings seasons. And yes, Google, I thought they had a pretty good quarter, but nonetheless, that has kind of question marked the whole leadership, that very narrow leadership of the top 10 stocks in the S&P 500, making up about 36% of the S&P 500. So I think this is healthy. It feels a little bit higher velocity on higher volume, so it doesn't feel great today. But I do think this is orderly, and it's much needed to see some form or fashion of a revaluation in our leadership stocks, specifically semiconductors and tech.
Do you think everyone would feel better, though, if we saw the Russells up today? You know, they say Mag 7 down 5%, the Russells are up 2%. We feel great about things.
Well, that dispersion is still pretty significant. With the NASDAQ down over 3%, you're seeing the Russell outperforming, yet still being down. So I do get excited about this turn in leadership. I get this excitement due to the fact that we haven't seen a rotation like this in quite some time. We've seen fits and starts, Kelly, but we haven't seen it. So I think it is coming. I think you are going to see that reduction. Think about it. We've talked about this many times. NVIDIA has over 500 different ETFs with in ownership in it. So they have to trim, they have to rebalance. That's going to have ramifications. There's consequences, and we've enjoyed the ride up. I think it's going to be a little bit higher velocity higher volume down. I'm looking for the VIX to go above 20 here before it all settles out, potentially in the month of August.
All right. In the meantime, George, as you look at the NASDAQ more broadly, you know, many of your other coverage area companies are in it. What do you make of the downdraft today?
Look, we've written a note, a series of notes called Something's Gotta Give with regards to, look, we don't cover NVIDIA. We don't have an opinion on the stock, but we do cover energy. And it's really fascinating to watch that a lot of the companies that appear to be buying a lot of the H100s, including Tesla, have admitted that they don't have the energy resources to power them. So in our opinion, either the energy resources that are being deployed to power NVIDIA chips really have to pick up steam, or there will be a digestion period of some of these NVIDIA chips in the marketplace. And that's why we call it Something's Gotta Give, because one has to be really good or the other one has to go through a digestion period. And maybe at least with regard to one of those companies, the big one, NVIDIA, the market is starting to pick that up.
Yeah, no, I think that's an interesting point, although wouldn't you say that comment is still bullish in the long run? It's not the narrative of people over-ordered or the AI investment isn't worth it. If the simple problem is powering it, then that's a more bullish observation, I would think, than perhaps the fear, which is, no, maybe it's not worth the money.
Yeah, I think that's right, Kelly. Although, you know, as you can probably tell from the lack of hair in my head, I started my career in 1998 covering technology stocks and specifically telecom equipment. So I remember very clearly that a lot of people spent a lot of money building out the internet, and they were right. The internet is obviously is a very big deal 27 years later. But the problem is that we had to go through this huge digestion period, and that was the dot-com bubble burst. Now, I'm not saying that one is the same as the other, but digestion can prove very difficult when stocks are at the multiples that they are today.
It's such an apt point. You can be right about the power, right about the need, and yet it doesn't make you sort of investable in the short run.
All right, I want to talk about NVIDIA, but we need to mention Tesla and Google's parent company Alphabet very briefly. Both Tesla and Alphabet reported earnings yesterday after market close. Tesla missed earnings expectations. Alphabet reported a decent quarter, but missed on ad revenue expectations. Keep in mind, right now the market's expectations for megacap tech earnings are just so extremely high, not only for the actual earnings, but also when it comes to these companies' forward-looking guidance. So if market participants perceive the slightest inkling of growth rates slowing in these companies, then the stocks are going to get hit hard because expectations are just so extremely high right now. In recent days, we've seen noticeable rotation into small caps whenever megacap tech would trade lower. And I think we are still seeing some rotation into small caps because although small caps are down today, they are down less than megacap tech, at least at the time of this recording. That being said, it does concern me that we're seeing nearly the entire market move down today, including small caps. Megacap tech is of course leading the way, but just about everything else in the market is following suit. So that does make me wonder if we're possibly entering a correction. I don't know. Time will tell. Now back to NVIDIA. On both Alphabet and Tesla's earnings calls, they reiterated that there is strong demand for NVIDIA chips. Alphabet essentially said that at this juncture, it is riskier to not spend money on AI than it is to spend money on AI, and they are looking to increase capex, which ultimately means more money going to NVIDIA. And then Tesla CEO Elon Musk reiterated that they can't get enough NVIDIA chips right now because demand is so great. Elon did say that Tesla intends to double down on Dojo and work toward producing their own chips to one day compete with NVIDIA. So that could prove to be a challenge for NVIDIA at some point in the future, but that likely won't be for some time. With all of that in mind, I am watching NVIDIA for a potential buying opportunity. Both Tesla and Alphabet's earnings calls were long-term bullish for the future of NVIDIA. Let's look at the charts now. In my last NVIDIA video, I told you we were waiting to see if we would break above this trend line or if it was a fake out. It was a breakout to the upside, but shortly thereafter NVIDIA repeatedly failed to make it above the long-term SMA line. Alphabet and Tesla reported earnings yesterday after market close, and then today we've come back down to that trend line, using it as support now rather than resistance. We did move lower than the most recent low of $115.04 that formed back on June 25th, which is not a good sign. I also want to point out that on the daily time frame, we have broken below the 50-day moving average at the time of this recording. We will have to wait and see if this is a true breakout to the downside or a fake out. Time will tell. Also, I find it interesting that the timing of this pullback in between earnings reports is nearly identical to the timing of the pullback we saw back in April. I'm not saying that things are going to play out the same way this time as they did back then. I just find it interesting that the timing between earnings reports in relation to the pullbacks are nearly identical. Now, personally, I am waiting to see if this pullback will provide a buying opportunity in NVIDIA. I started telling you back on June 20th and 21st August that I was expecting softening in NVIDIA's price and choppy price action, likely lasting into mid to late July. Now please understand me here. I do not know what the future holds and I could be completely wrong. That being said, I would consider adding NVIDIA in the range of $98 per share and $112 per share, and the closer to 98 the better. I've been saying this for about a month now. I've said many times over the past month that I expected softening in NVIDIA's price likely lasting into mid to late July, and then pre-anticipatory running once we enter August as we get closer to NVIDIA's next earnings report. I will mention one caveat to this though. If we get a correction in the overall market, then I would be much more cautious about the idea of a pre-anticipatory run-up in NVIDIA in August. After all, if the entire market pulls back, then it will most likely pull NVIDIA down with it, or at least weigh down on NVIDIA. For now, I am patiently watching the entire market to see what happens next. If we are entering a correction, then I want to be much more cautious before buying in. Is this the start of a correction, or is this just a temporary setback? I don't know. Time will tell. With that being said, I hope you're having a great day, and I'm curious to know your thoughts on NVIDIA in the comments below. Please leave a like on this video so more people will see it. And while you're down there, please consider subscribing. It's free, and you can always change your mind. Thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video.